Koonin. He's the president of Turner Entertainment Networks, where he oversees programming, marketing, scheduling, strategy, and operations, and in his spare time, for a portfolio of top networks in cable, TNT, TBS, Turner Classic Movies, and True TV. And I'm sorry to say how many of those I do watch on a regular basis, especially Turner Classic Movies. Don't tell my congregants. Okay, Koonin, who was selected for TV Guide's The Power List and named by Entertainment Weekly, is one of the smartest people in television, came to Turner in February of 2000. He first headed up TNT before later taking oversight of TBS, TCM, and True TV. Prior to joining Turner, Koonin spent 14 years at the Coca-Cola Company, serving as Vice President of Consumer Marketing, where he was responsible for positioning and development of brand and sales, volume building strategies in the United States. He studied marketing at the University of Georgia, serves on the boards of the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, the Georgia Aquarium, the Fox Theater, and the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. He is on the board of GameStop, the world's largest video game and entertainment software retailer, and Turner Broadcasting Systems Incorporated, a Time Warner company, creates and programs branded news, entertainment, animation, and young adult and sports media environments on television and other platforms for consumers around the world.
If I forgot your name, thank you, Rabbi. Thank you very much for having me come speak to you today. It's a real honor. My presentation, and I'm a little bit of an unconventional speaker at a religious conference. So what I wanted to do is try to find the ties that bind us and try to create something that has, hopefully, some value for you. So the common ground that I found, there's two. One is we're both storytellers. And when I take you through here today, I'll tell you our story, and then I'll show you how we use and create relevance, which is the second tie that binds us, to build stories and relevant stories for our audiences, which is, I think, the common ground that we have. I put together some rules that we follow that hopefully will help tell the story. Our first catalyst is we see the world through a different pair of eyes. When you run a TV network, you're trying to guess and anticipate what people's taste would be, where they want to go, what they want to watch, what the mood of the country is, far in advance, because it takes up to 2 or 3 years to build a schedule and get it on the air. So we believe in looking at the world through the consumer's eyes. I'm a huge believer in research. And when I started for Turner in 2000, TBS and TNT were named, the names really don't mean anything. When you're watching the History Channel, the Food Network, Comedy Central, you know what those are. TBS and TNT were named for the creator, and I don't mean this one. I mean Ted Turner. And so he named them for himself. And so they were alphabet soup. They really didn't mean anything. So what they brought me in from Coca-Cola to do is to build brands, to make networks and give them context. And that's what we did. So the first thing we had to do was talk to consumers. And we asked them to draw, because instead of talking to people, if you ask them to draw, you see what's in their heads and in their minds. And what we saw was all these different images that you see on the screen. This is from 11 years ago. Basketball, westerns, movies. In essence, we were known for the parts, not the sum of the parts. And it gave us great insight that we really weren't known for anything. And so our job was to change all that. So what we did is we spent 6 or 8 months talking to literally thousands of viewers. And we found that there were 5 distinct mindsets, not what they report their behavior, but mindsets and attitudes towards television. And so if you allow me to take them through. First is the cultural highbrows. And these are people who call TV the idiot box. These are people whose television serves in case of weather warnings. They really don't enjoy TV as a medium. The exact opposite, we don't really care for those people, by the way. The exact opposite is TV worshipers. Now, I put worshipers in here today trying to find some common ground. We really call them couch potatoes because they watch on average, 47 hours of television a week. In essence, watching TV to this group is a full-time job. We love these people. Then you have competition lovers, and competition lovers generally are men, and they watch sports and then they watch the highlights of the sports they just watched. So they can talk about the sports that they just watched and the highlights of the sports that they just watched. And they move like a school of fish from network to network, sports to sport, and they're really not loyal to a network, they're loyal to the sport. And then you have two other groups. One is what we described as drama lovers. And the essence of what we heard from them is they wanted television that makes them think and feel. A television that touches their heart and their mind. And those were storytellers that we thought we could do business with. And the other is comedy lovers, which are young people who actually use comedy as a mood elevation, almost as their Prozac. So we had a philosophy that we were going to grow by shrinking. We would grow our business by shrinking our focus. And we focused on competition lovers, which are sports, which are the ultimate live male drama. TV worshipers who will watch everything and anything. Remember, we love them. And the drama lovers. And that would be our key audience. The people who want to see television that touches their heart and mind. Now, whenever you're building a brand or building a business, you have to have focus. And we call focus the F word. Because it's easy, especially in television, to try to be all things to all people. That's why broadcast, which are the broadcast networks, have lost 20% of their audience in the past decade. Because they try to be all things to all people. So we're specializing in what we're doing. And we wanted a business that was focused, relevant, consistent to deliver, and if possible, to be the first and unique. And that's what we've been able to do with TNT. We are the first and only network dedicated to drama. Now, drama was a word that scared us. Is it melodrama? Is it Shakespeare? What kind of drama do we want? How do we describe it? And that fear created a lot, that kind of unknowing what kind of drama created a lot of fear. The other thing that created a lot of fear is the #1 rated programming on the network was wrestling. And nice. That's great. I'm being heckled by my rabbis. That's outstanding. So, again, if we are going to be true to our words of focus, we did something that no TV network in the history of the medium has ever done. We canceled our top-rated show. And so we took the risk of canceling wrestling because we could not be a legitimate branded drama network with something that was as made up as wrestling. So, you realize you're not paying me, right? Okay. If you're paying me, you can heckle. You're not paying me. So, this is fun. I love this. I got to be honest with you. This is a great audience. Let's go. So, if I could calm all of you down long enough, let me show you the TNT that we did focus and the TNT we made in the wonderful world of TNT.
Charlie, which would you rather? Museums with Grandma or schizophrenic murder suspects with your Aunt Brenda?
Bye, Grandma.
We're not spying. We are gathering data to test a hypothesis.
Fun. It's just beginning.
Thank you. Am I going to go down as the first person in history that showed stripping and unzipping videos to a bunch of rabbis?
We were in Las Vegas last year.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, I like that. Okay, we're going to have, I would recommend, Rabbi Lewis, that you next year you book a session on wrestling pros and cons. So in our business, at the core of it is creativity. And creativity is the currency, and great ideas come from everywhere. We've invented and created this TNT We Know drama. Our partners in TNT Europe are getting ready to launch, and they just ran this commercial. They just made this. So hopefully you can see it. Take a look, and I'll tell you something about it that is outstanding. Great if you could do it. We could never do that here. That is the most viral video in the history of the internet. It's been shared over 30 million times. And which is just astounding to us. But just the simple idea of putting a little drama in everybody's life, we've been able to share that. I've gotten it like from 10 people I know in Atlanta who go, "Were you aware of this?" And it's like, really? What do you think I drive to every day for 12 years? So as in any good drama, you have to have the part about overcoming obstacles. And our story is no different. In 2003 and 2004, we were assigned to take over TBS. And TBS Ted Turner invented cable television in America. TBS was a superstation. It was made up of old movies, Jacques Cousteau, and mostly Atlanta Braves. And so we had to go build something that would appeal to young viewers. In TBS, we saw a big opportunity to talk to that comedy lovers. We still had the TV worshipers, we still had the legacy of baseball, but we focused on comedy lovers. And we had a real challenge because at the time the leading comedy network was named Comedy Central. Fairly obvious. We were named TBS. Not very obvious. So we built TBS Very Funny. And I'm very, very pleased to tell you TBS is now the #1 network in all of cable television, and it is rapidly approaching Fox in ratings, and hopefully one day will take over and be broadcast. I'm also pleased to tell you that both of our brands, TBS and TNT, have been inducted into the Television Hall of Fame. Now, in any business, you have to make bets. You have to have courage. You have to place your bets. Now, I do like to gamble on a personal level. I do like to take chances. And in a business that 9 out of 10 shows fail, it is very, very difficult to pick and guess what the American consumer wants. So a lot of times, some of the simplest things seem to be the biggest risks. And one of the simplest ideas we came up with is that primetime television, with Desperate Housewives going away, is missing that big, juicy primetime soap. So we went and we're bringing back Dallas. Yes! That's fantastic. I will tell you, I'm having more fun today than when I've talked to anybody.
And keep in mind that this is the intellectual leadership of the conservative
I love it. It's fantastic. My colleagues are going to go back to the office and go, those are the most fun Jews I have ever seen in my life. It's like a comedy convention.
If you read it from right to left, it's the Food Network.
I give up. You win. Yes, we're bringing back salad. I've looked at that logo for 3 freaking years and I never saw salad, and I love to eat. Okay, salad, the next generation. So we're introducing Dallas, which was one of the most iconic and historic series in all of television, and we're picking up with the kids, JR's son, John Ross, and Bobby's son, Christopher. Take a look at the new Dallas. This is a scene from the new Dallas. Let's dim the lights up.
What the hell are you doing? No more than Jock did. Drilling for oil on South Fork.
Miss Ellie threw Jock's rig off the ranch.
80 years ago, Christopher.
You have no right to drill on this land. I'm a Ewing. I have every right.
We only confirmed the find this morning, Bobby. John was going to tell you tonight.
You're a part of this?
He's part of the reserve on a seismic survey. If I'm right, we're sitting on a couple of billion barrels of light, sweet crude. The most sought-after crude oil in the world.
This will make us richer than we ever imagined, Uncle Bobby.
Can we turn up the volume a
It'll
little,
change
guys?
everything.
I am sick to death of this family devouring itself over money. This is exactly what I didn't want to happen.
John knew it would be hard to convince you. All he's asking is that you think about this.
Think about what? A pay formation this thick's got to be 2 miles deep. It'll have to be fracked.
You don't know what you're talking
It's
about.
the end of the ranch, Elena.
Oil's in your blood. When did you turn your back on it?
When I got away from everything that was toxic around these parts.
I promised Mama there would be no drilling on South Fork.
You don't think we're long past caring about Miss Ellie's precious little wishes?
John Ross, don't you ever speak my mama's name in my presence again. You dishonor her. We're done talking, son. South Fork is for sale, no drilling, oil alternatives are the future.
Keep me out of it, Dad. Oh, Bobby's not your dad. Everybody knows your dad sold you when you were a little baby. You'll never be a Ewing, Christopher.
Stop it. Good. That's enough. John Ross. Christopher. It's enough.
It's over.
You listen to me, boy. There is no drilling on my ranch.
So that's a little taste of the new Dallas, June 13th. Now, I've bragged here today, told you how we've moved to #1, how we've grown the business, but one of the great lessons that we have is ideas are disposable. We like to say ideas are like disposable diapers. When they're full of crap, throw them away. And the lesson is don't become too invested in your idea. Don't be inflexible. Don't become married to your idea, because I've done that. And I always like to end a presentation after showing you success is, quite frankly, to show you the failures. And this one's a doozy. One of the things we air at TNT is a lot of theatrical movies. And we had the movie A Perfect Storm coming January several years ago. And I thought it would be a great idea to get people's attention to run something like this.
His own gun. So he killed the girl, killed himself, and then threw the gun out the window.
Come on. He had the gun in the apartment for 3 years. The wife didn't know about it? The kid didn't know about it?
But how would Doug Phillips know? The wife's alibi is shot. So you have means and opportunity. What about motive? Try blonde at 30.
Did any of you know the FCC owns that tone, bah, 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 and you're not allowed to use it to get people to watch your TV network unless there's a real storm coming? So when the head of the FCC had called with 162,000 complaints and threatened to pull our license, we learned maybe this is not a good idea. Maybe we should pursue another route. So I leave you with that. Not all ideas are good. You are an amazing audience. I can't wait to be in Shul Saturday. My expectations are here. Thank you for your time. Let me introduce Rabbi Abby.
I don't know. I think I have a suggestion for a series. It's about like wacky rabbis and their congregations. We've got comedy. We've got worshipers. We've got drama. We have some culture. We definitely have competition, and we all have to overcome obstacles. So I don't know. I think we're, and I think it's the people to be willing to start. Okay. I'm now going to introduce Jay Kamin. We haven't gone through whether we're related or not. We are related. Okay. This is my cousin Jay. Your mom would be so proud that you're here right now, and I'm going to call her afterwards to tell her we were here together. It means a lot. Jay Kamin is the executive director of the Marcus Foundation. The foundation is the vision and commitment of Bernie Marcus, co-founder of the Home Depot. Jay joined the foundation in 2001 as the program director. The foundation has as one of its highest priorities building a strong and vibrant Jewish community. The emphasis is on a wide range of grants focusing on the pillars of Jewish communal life, including, that is getting interesting, including Jewish camping, interfaith outreach, synagogue transformation, day school education, informal Jewish education, and defense. Also, the foundation is a supporter of projects in Israel, including the founding of the Israel Democracy Institute, dedicated to political reform, and the National Initiative of Yamin Ord, now operating in youth villages, high schools, and resident facilities. Most recently, the foundation is seeking to ensure genetic testing for 19 Jewish genetic diseases by every potential Jewish parent. A graduate of the University of Florida, Jay has a diverse career in the nonprofit and for-profit sectors. Positions have included campaign director for the United Way of Escambia County? Okay. Southeast Regional Director for the Anti-Defamation League, and is a part-time consultant for the 1990s for United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, conducting over 200 synagogue leadership workshops across the Southeast. For 12 years, Jay was involved in a family metals company before moving to Atlanta. Got it? Read this last line. He's married to Natalie and is very proud of Rabbi Ari Kaiman, my second cousin, and Emily, David, Shira Hudson, and Eliza Kaiman, and he's equally blessed with 3 wonderful grandchildren.
So how do I follow Steve? First of all, welcome to your competition, Steve Koonin, who, as you sit here and enjoy him, you realize that when they're not in shul, they're watching Turner.
We should be so lucky.
Right. I'm here today. I was asked to make some comments as a follow-up to Steve's presentation on Turner, and to sort of put it into the context of the Jewish community. First of all, our foundation, obviously, as was reported, is the vision of Bernie Marcus, who created a culture, Home Depot. How many of you shop at Home Depot? Very good. You should know every time you shop at Home Depot that it directly benefits the Jewish world, if you didn't realize that, in terms of our work, both the Jewish world and in other areas regarding medical research. How many of you have been to the Georgia Aquarium here? That was a gift by Bernie as a thank you to Georgia. Steve's on the board of the Georgia Aquarium. We appreciate the work that you do in terms of the aquarium and making sure that it's it's the best in the world. And I think I'm proud to say that we think it is. So if you haven't been there, you should go there. Steve touched on a lot of things. I think some of the main points that I'd like to highlight just in brief is number one, Steve talked about when he came to Turner how he was willing to ditch the things that didn't work. That's a valuable lesson. And so even though you liked wrestling, and I've been to a lot of synagogue board meetings, there's a lot of wrestling at synagogue board meetings, but it's obvious that that took a lot of courage. Steve talked about creativity in the context of what you have to do in terms of the mandate of your institutions. I think creativity is imperative. When I started working in the foundation world, there was a lot of talk about trans-denominationalism. All of my colleagues in the foundations had a lot of discussions about we're now entering a new world of trans-denominational Judaism. I didn't necessarily buy it. I think it was a dangerous concept. It's still out there, but then we moved into a conversation of post-denominationalism, that we're now living in a world of post-denominationalism. And I was in a meeting last week among some of my colleagues in New York in the foundation world, and they started talking about post-institutionalism. That we've now gone beyond that, and that we're not even looking at institutions. So when you talk about the need for you as the leadership of the Jewish world, and I want to stress that today, that you are the leadership of the Jewish world. It's not necessarily talked about a lot, but if you're not, who is? So I want to make sure that you understand that the creativity in terms of creating an institution that's vibrant, that's relevant, because what we're really talking about today is how do your institutions stay relevant? How does your institutions talk to your congregants, and how does the institutions themselves make you excited from a creative point of view in terms of the stories that brought you to the rabbinate, that was the calling for you to make you excited? So that's a very important lesson in terms of the creativity that Steve was able to bring to Turner, and I challenge you, it's also a challenge for all of you in terms of the creativity that you have to bring to your institutions. Steve also talked about in his presentation how he had to overcome obstacles. And I can tell you, working within Jewish life for most of my career, in and out of it, but for most of my career, there are many, many obstacles. There are many obstacles within the Jewish community, and there are many obstacles out there just in general. So for example, if you even take a step outside the Jewish community, look at trends nationally, one of the trends which should speak to all of us in terms of an obstacle is that the median age of marriage, how many of you know what the median age of marriage now is? 32. So 32 years old is the median age. How many people will not get married in their lifetime now? 35%. 51%. Okay. So when you look at creativity and obstacles in terms of market share, using, if I could be so bold not to do this with Steve here, it's intimidating. Your work is quite unique. Your work is quite interesting, because think about the age of 22 to 35-year-olds. Think about those that are not getting married and the relevance that your institution will have to those 51% that will never have children, that will never have a need for a life cycle event until they are very sick. Huge obstacle. So we have to start thinking in terms of those terms. Obviously, and you're all the experts on Jewish life, so I don't need to stand up here and talk about all the obstacles, but obviously we're in an era that's post-Holocaust. We're in an area where our grandparents and immigration is a memory, not a reality, where we have the actual smells and feelings of our grandparents and our parents and those that came over from Eastern Europe. And for the most part, we have those that don't remember the creation of the State of Israel. You know, one of my concerns, I know you had Vice President Biden here today, who the news here in Atlanta said that he was speaking to conservative rabbis, and I don't think they thought of you as conservative rabbis with a little c, but they thought of you as the conservative rabbis of the world, and Biden came to talk to you. But the fact of the matter is, when President Obama says we need to return to the 1967 borders, and you have the problem in your congregation of the political debate, the real issue is those that aren't in your congregation who are between the ages of 22 and 35 that don't know what happened in 1967. And research proves that that's a real issue and a real problem for us. So there are many, many obstacles. Steve also talked about making bets and taking risks. That That's great. It's easy to say. It's much easier for Steve, who's the CEO of Turner, and your staff is sitting here today, and I know you're totally engaged in this conversation. You'll have a lot of questions after you leave here about us folk. But the fact of the matter is, taking risk in a company is much easier. My boss, Bernie Marcus, was fired from his job at 52 in California. He didn't have anything other than an idea about starting a big box store called Home Depot. He came to Atlanta, and in Atlanta, the folks were nice to him. In fact, the folks were very nice to him, and he said, I'm not going to go back to LA, but I'm going to start this concept in Atlanta. So can you imagine at 52 being fired? Ross Perot was going to be the major investor, but he wanted Bernie to get rid of his Cadillac, a used Cadillac, because he said people in his company don't drive Cadillacs. So Bernie thought about it and said, I've spent my whole life working for people. He called Ross Perot and said, the deal's off. I'm not going to work for anybody. I'm going to take the risks. So with Arthur Blank and Ken Langone and several others, he mortgaged everything he had at 53 and started one store here in Atlanta called Home Depot. That's a risk, right? And the rest is history. At 83 today, he's got, he's done well in Home Depot itself. He's done well so that he can give it all back. But that's taking risks for all of you in the room. And that is, he said, ideas are disposable, right? Okay, you can look at a show and say, it's gone. Yep. You can look at a marketing campaign and you can say, it's gone. In the conservative movement in Judaism and theology, I don't know if you can really do that. Well, some of you do. But the fact of the matter, ideas in your life is not necessarily disposable, and nor should it be. And I would argue that today in this world that we live in, that doesn't have the memory of our grandparents and doesn't have the survival issues of the Holocaust or the creation of the birth of Israel, we do have something else. And that is, and I strongly believe this from the researchers out there, and I don't have a fancy PowerPoint, and I don't have Stephen Cohen and Jack Wertheimer's research, but you've all read it and you know it. We're a very spiritual people. People are yearning for individual spirituality. They're yearning for some type of structure. So while I can't always go along with that ideas are not disposable, I can say there are certain things within your congregations that you've done over the years that are tradition that don't necessarily equate to Jewish tradition. They more equate to culture of your congregation. I once did a workshop that I did for a synagogue in Palm Beach. Is anybody here from Palm Beach? Okay, I can do this. So in Palm Beach, I once did a workshop, and I realized that everybody in the workshop were past presidents of other synagogues in the Northeast. It was the worst workshop I ever did because everybody thought they knew everything, and now they were presidents of their congregations in Palm Beach. So I made the mistake of saying, I know the problem. You're a bunch of mockers. We have mockeritis. Bad move. You should never say that to a group. The fact of the matter is, you do have mockers, you do have leaders, and you do have traditions, and you do have histories in your congregation. So it's a real problem to try to figure out what's disposable and what's not. But if you're going to reinvent your congregations for the 21st century, you really have to think about what is relevant and what's not relevant. And then that brings me to the last point. And that was not in Steve's presentation about what he was able to accomplish. And I must tell you, Turner in Atlanta and in the country is one of the great civic leaders in terms of what they accomplish and what they do. And we couldn't really survive without companies like Turner and Coca-Cola and Home Depot and these companies, because as much as people complain about them, especially in society today, what they give back is absolutely unbelievable. But the fact of the matter is, people don't trust. We see it today in the streets and the parks and around the country. Your congregants don't trust. If you look at surveys and research out there, one of the biggest problems we have is that folks don't trust institutions. So when we in the foundation world talk about post-institutional issues, what we're really talking about is people have lacked trust in the government, people have lost trust in the stores and the retailers, people have lost trust in those that have wealth, people have lost trust in their schools and their universities, and in fact, people have lost trust in synagogues and churches. And the question that it raises from the research, and some of it has just come out, is why have they lost trust? And one of the outcomes of the research that shows why they've had lost trust is the simple fact that there's so much uncertainty in the world. And if they're not certain about what the world brings, if they don't know what's going to be out there, they turn to things they can trust. And I would argue sometimes, Steve, that they can turn to Turner, because they know that on Tuesday night, or on Friday night at 8 o'clock, I shouldn't say this, Dallas is going to be on TV.
Wednesday at 9.
Wednesday at 9.
Starting June 13th.
Okay. So there's something comforting to know that during the day, as you go through your cynical life, that at 9 o'clock that night you can turn on TV and watch the show that you like. And you trust that show, and there's a certainty that shows, so that for that hour you can have comfort. Now translate that back in terms of your own synagogues and institutions and what they see when they come in there. And what's the feeling that they get when they get in there in terms of the issue of trust and the feeling of certainty. So I would suggest to you we have to raise that issue of trust. We have to raise that issue of certainty so that people feel good about it. And I'm going to close with two things I just wanted to close with in terms of my conversation. First is I think it's extremely important. Have you been reading about the University of Chicago Hillel? Anybody here from Chicago? Okay. A lot of issues going on now with the Hillel at Chicago. I'm not going to go into it today. I'm not going to talk about it. I urge you all to look at that as a case study of what's happening in the Jewish community. Because here you have a Hillel that was working very hard and I'm not taking sides on who's right or wrong, whether it's the Chicago Federation or the Hillel of Chicago. I'm not here to take sides. But I think what's important for us all to look at is what both sides are saying and how the Chicago Hillel leadership is talking about disruptive leadership and how they're talking about not being in a building but creating intentional Judaism with relationships. And at the end of the day, what happened was there's a split. And the tragedy of the split is they're both going to go out and do the exact same thing. Used to be years ago, if you remember, in the Federation world, we had a saying. What was the saying? We are one. Okay? I think recently here in the Federation in Atlanta, the saying was, give generously. Okay? Think about the two issues. We are one and give generously. And think about the schism and the tension between those two worlds. Think about how that leads to certainty, and think about how that leads to trust, and think about how that leads to you being able to adapt and do the great things that Steve was able to accomplish at Turner and to make a difference. And then the final thing that I have to talk about that Steve didn't talk about, but every meeting I have to talk about this, and that is social media. Because if I don't talk about social media, then I don't feel like I've had a meeting. Because in every foundation meeting, somebody takes out their iPad, Rabbi Warnick, and shows me technology in terms of presentations. Well, I had a very interesting experience this week, and that was that I had the privilege of being in Palo Alto. Anybody here from Palo Alto? Nearby. And I got to spend an evening and a day with Sergey Brin and his wife Ann at Google, a nice Jewish couple who he walks up with his Google glasses that he's experimenting with, where now he can have a conversation with me, and as he's having a conversation with me without knowing it, he can check his emails, he can take my picture, he can Google me, and I don't even know it while he's talking to me. Okay, think about the implications of that for our future in terms of that. He showed me a car that you can now get into without a driver, and he's developing it so we'll never have to drive again. Rabbi Lewis and I are thrilled because we get tickets in East Cobb constantly on that issue. And the experiments and things that he was able to show me at Google, this 35-year-old Russian Jewish immigrant, was absolutely phenomenal. But there were two things that struck me about the meeting. As much as they spent their entire time talking about technology, they brought us to a restaurant where we had dinner. And that restaurant they created so that within the mile radius, everybody that lived within the mile could constantly eat together. Right? So because they're so busy, so there are two rooms on the adjacent to the restaurant where the kids can go and play, and the families can eat together, and the neighbors know each other. And they all go back to Google and all these other high-tech places. It's a different world. Steve, I know you've seen it, you've been there. But the fact of the matter was it was extremely important for them to have that restaurant. And that meant that they were community. Without even articulating it to me, they were so proud of it. So as much as he was wearing the glasses as he ate with me, he wanted to show me this community. And then the next day when Bernie and I took a tour, he showed us the campus of Google. He showed us that there were 43 restaurants at Google, all free. And when I asked him why you have 40, everywhere there was food. And And you know, there's a certain thing, there's different types of Jews in your congregation. I classify them in ways we don't have time today, but one's affiliated motivated. You can always tell affiliated motivated Jews, by the way, in your congregation, by if they're at a meeting, if there's no meal or food afterwards, they get upset because they want to be part of your congregation, but they also want the schmooze time. And Sergey said very clearly, while we have all this technology, it doesn't matter. They need a time and a break to get together, have a relaxed time so they can simply talk to each other. And at the end of the day, as we look at all the challenges and issues and all the great things that Turner was able to create, the fact of the matter is what people still want is to talk to each other. And Steve ended his presentation today talking about the importance of storytelling. And what I'd like to suggest to you today from my observation in the foundation world is the storytelling isn't you telling your congregants stories, and it's not even your congregants telling you the stories. It's your congregants telling each other their own stories. And with that, I think we'll be very successful. Thank you very much.
We have time for questions, so if people want to line up.
Moish Steigman, Westchester, New York. I thank you both for your time and for your counsel and for the humor as well. I think you're speaking to a group, I don't want to speak, on all of our behalf, who to some degree or another is willing to take risks. And I'll certainly speak for myself. I don't know if other of my colleagues are in the same boat. We often work with boards or communities which ironically tend to be more risk averse than we are. And I don't know if you have strategy. Perhaps this is a marketing question. Perhaps this is a strategy question. How do we engage with a group of people which in many ways is overcome by the fear of the risk, perhaps more than the opportunity presented by taking that risk?
I mean, my personal belief are committees are good for the consumption of sandwiches, and that's about it.
For the viewers at home, if you could use the mic, please, okay. And the viewers that are watching live.
There's nobody watching this live. Seriously. Your question is a good one, because the problem with the committee is that everybody's responsible, but nobody's accountable. And some of the things that are really important can be discussed, but somebody's got to be the decision maker. And again, I sit on boards and I sit on committees, and it's frustrating because there's always multiple points of view, and consensus isn't always the right answer. And so sometimes, as the risk you have to take, in my opinion, as the leader, is you have to say, this is what we're doing. And this is the way we're going, and I need all of your support. Because otherwise it just spins, and I think we've all seen that happen time and time again.
Well, I mentioned that there are three types of members. I said they're affiliated, motivated, they want to have meetings, and afterwards they want to have a meal. You have two other types of members in your congregation. You have those that I call power motivated. A good way to tell them is go to, and by the way, you should visit all their offices, because you can tell a lot by their offices. So they have a lot of plaques on their walls. They're usually power motivated. They might have started out as affiliated motivated. Power motivated members are probably those that are going to be more willing to do something without asking a lot of questions. And it's your job to finesse that so that you can take cover, but at the end of the day, you're also going to have to take some risk. And you're also going to have to be willing to say, we need something. The third type of member that I didn't mention was achievement motivated. Those are folks that need a beginning and an end. They thrive on the fact that you give them a goal, and you give them a timetable where they can have an actual end. So if you can identify which members of your congregation fit those molds and give them the right task, you're going to be better served. And I would like to also suggest, in terms of this committee thing, which is absolutely insane, and with all due respect, I tried it at our congregation. It didn't work for me. Committees can work, as Steve says, in terms of you need them, but you need some SWAT teams. You need some people out there that are given goals and let them run. And the hardest thing, I think, for the rabbinic community and for nonprofit professionals outside in other areas is letting go and giving control to others. And you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to be able to say, this is a goal, whatever that might be, and you've got to step back, and you've just got to hold your breath. And you've got to make sure that they're strong enough and they finesse it enough. and you're not going to be able to make everybody happy. And one of the biggest problems you guys have, and I know it from watching this for many years, is you got a lot of people that think that you know, when they call you, you got to jump, and I feel bad for you for that. But you got to let go, and you got to let people run with it. And I think that's one of the reasons why my world, the foundation world, because most of the people in my world look at ourselves as venture capitals. We don't look at ourselves as foundations. We want return on investment. We want to invest in somebody that's willing to take the risk, and we want to be able to measure the results. That means whoever we fund has to be strong enough to stand up in front of us and say, I'm going to take a risk. This is what we're going to accomplish. Nothing's going to stop us. If they take it and they put it in a committee and they say, here's Bernie's money, now the committee's going to decide how we're going to do it, and they come back 2 years later and say, we're still thinking about it, that's not going to work for us.
Jesse Olitsky, Jacksonville, Florida. Question first for Steve and then for Jay. First, you know, I grew up watching TV, and when I watched TV, I made sure I was home on a Thursday night so I didn't miss my favorite show. And yet the way we watch TV has changed with DVR and digital recorders. People watch based on their own terms, fast forward through commercials, fast forward through parts they don't like, and I see that it's more a society of instant gratification. People watch when they want to watch, what they want to watch on their own terms, regardless of what programming you set. So how has the TV world evolved to respond to that? And then Jay, I would say, how have you seen the Jewish community responding to that, especially as many of us are talking about how to deal with a millennial generation? I feel like that's very much the mentality of the millennial generation. I'll take what you give me when I want it, and that's it.
Okay, so from the TV perspective, that we can't resist technology, we have to embrace it. So what we've been able to do is a couple of things. The DVR, the video recorder, have allowed people to watch more television, and they do watch more television. We worked with the advertising community to change the currency of how TV is measured. Now it's called C3, that anytime your commercial's watched within 3 days of taping, we get paid for it. And while, yes, we do lose a certain percentage to fast forward, surprisingly, we don't lose what you might think. So all in all, we've come out about even. One of the other propositions we've developed is something called TV Everywhere, which is in place but hasn't been well commercialized. If you're a subscriber to cable, you can watch your favorite channels, your favorite shows, anytime, anywhere, on any device. And that, the infrastructure's been laid in, and that is something you'll see explode in the next couple of years. Comcast announced today that you can watch ESPN anytime, anywhere, on any device. And we've been part of it for a year, and you'll see more of that. We have to change to the technology, because if we stand there and go, no, 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 we're going to get run over by it. Okay?
Yeah, well, this is something that we spend a lot of time on. We're the third funder of Birthright, and there was a lot of debate on Birthright as we funded about giving these strips away or should we charge, and what's happening with that generation. And I will tell you, it's a real problem. But I think that if I use Birthright as an example, I want to say to you that I challenge you that it's also something that I think you can do to help in this arena. There's no reason, for example, why every person that goes on Birthright that lives in your communities isn't given a free membership to your congregation, and not only given a free membership, but specifically asked to get involved and give them a job to do in your congregation. If you haven't done it, do it, because I think part of the problem is we think they won't do it. We think they're looking for instant gratification. I'm going to push back and say they just need to be asked. And if you're not asking these young people between the ages of 22 to 35 to do things like work in your schools and do things that are reasonable, or tutoring kids one-on-one, I'm not saying to tell them to come to shul, every week, but I'm giving them specific jobs that are easy, that are doable, that make them feel part of your community. I believe that we're underestimating that generation. One last plug on that. One of the reasons I got one applause, Steve. Don't forget that. So one of the reasons we're doing the Jewish genetic testing, and let me stress to you, and I know Debbie and them were here, but one of the reasons we're sponsoring this and we decided to do this without going into great detail about our motivation, is the initial white paper that we wrote on this was twofold. One is we don't believe any child should be born with one of these 19 genetic diseases in this country and the world, and we think it's absurd that doctors aren't doing all 19 tests. But the second part of the white paper was about reaching this generation, because for the first time time in communities across this country, people are coming together, rabbis from all denominations and federations and others, and they're having conversations about how do we reach this population to get them tested. So part of this was not just about testing, but it was have the conversation for the institutions and for the communities and you, the leaders of the community, to come together to figure out how to educate and how to create a database, reach these people, motivate them, get them tested. But also, once you get them tested, you're not asking them to do anything but say, hey, care, and it makes them say one simple word, I'm a Jew, or 3 simple words, I'm a Jew, I have to be tested. And if they say I'm a Jew, you've got the door, you've got the crack in the door, guys. And so we think they just need to be asked. So I just urge you, since you brought the question up, don't underestimate this generation. They're ready to go, and they're primed.
We're going to end this session on time. So we're going to have one more question, and then we'll say goodbye.
Jay, Larry Siebert from New York City. 2 quick things. One about the statistics. Does that apply? That was general population. Does it also divide up into the Jewish population? And second, maybe this is a question for later. Can you say a little bit more about the research about no dues, better income?
Well, those are 2-hour questions. So the first one is that I can't. I'll call Stephen Cohen and we'll drill down on that. I would bet you that on the age of marriage is a little older for the Jewish community than the general population. Now that's intuitive and anecdotal, so I can't tell you that for sure. But I think it's probably around 34, 35, we have our representatives Ramad Durham here, which I'm very proud that they're here. But that has great implications for our sustainability of our communities. For example, if the average age of parents now are going to be 45 to 50 sending their kids to camp for the first time, think about the implications from a sustainability point of view of our camps and other institutions. So as far as the marriage, I don't think we can get much higher than 51%, so I would imagine that's going to hold true for the Jewish community. As far as the dues, that's a whole other conversation that I would love to have with all of you. We're doing work, one of our grantees is Synagogue 3000, Larry Hoffman, Ron Wolfson, and we have 5 pilots around the country that we're doing right now in that area. I truly believe that we need to parallel some of our work that the churches are doing. And what I would suggest every one of you to do is take a walk within a mile radius of your congregations and go to the churches in your community and talk to those pastors at those interfaith breakfasts that you all like and have and say to them, how do you do it? And I think you'll find it's not so hard. But I can pay dues to Eitz Chaim, and no one really, and I can then get 12 requests during the year from Men's Club Sister and everybody else about other things that I'm so confused. At the end of the day, people give, and this isn't a criticism, it's just reality. At the end of the day, people give a lot of money. I mean, it's absurd when I see the amount of money synagogues are not raising, and I watch your congregants, and I know what they're giving in the general community. I see their names on lists that are absolutely crazy. So you guys need to be challenged, and I'm not saying this as a criticism. I think we're working off a 1950s model of institutions that just don't work for today. So I know that it's going to be very hard to get rid of these dues, but I think I will go out on a limb and say the survival of the Jewish community, really, of synagogues, really will depend on the bravery of a few of you to bite the bullet. And there are those out there that are doing it. And that means reconfiguring your staff. That means hiring somebody on your staff that knows how to reach out to people and cultivate them. You can't do everything. It means probably looking at the role of your executive director a little differently than you've been looking at it. It's also challenging your board to think differently. And by the way, that's one of your problems, is because if you say this, some of them don't want to do it because they themselves know that they're not giving what they should be giving. So again, I'm very passionate, as you can tell, on this subject, but I think it's the same passion that Steve brought to Turner in terms of throwing out wrestling. I would throw out dues. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our speakers. Informative, interesting, passionate, helpful. Thank you so much for taking your time out to speak to us today. I do have one quick announcement. The 5 p.m. K-Roof session will be beginning in Kern Porter, and this is a location change. It's going to begin at 5 o'clock. And thank you all so much for being here.